With breaking news as we come on the air this Monday night, live pictures of Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. Less than 24 hours from now, Kamala Harris will hold a rally with her new running mate, named to be announced. In northern Israel, evacuation orders are in effect as fears grow of an all-out war in the Middle East. At least 5 Americans have been hurt by an Iranian-backed militia in Iraq. 5 American service members. Iran and its proxies are expected to launch retaliatory strikes at Israel and at U.S. bases at any moment. We're following breaking news on Wall Street. Trump branding a historic drop in the Dow, quote, the Kamala crash. Busy Monday. It's August. You wouldn't expect anything else. Welcome to the fairest show on television. And first tonight, for all of the obvious reasons above, a stock market crash in uncertain economic times, another war about to break out in the Middle East, a lame duck president barely holding on, and his vice president now doing everything possible to disavow his legacy. For all of those reasons, Donald Trump should be up high single, maybe even low double digits in the presidential race. And he is not. The latest polling from Morning Consult shows an 8-point swing in 2 weeks. Biden trailed the former president by 4 on July 15th. Now Harris leads by 4. Swing state polls are bad for Trump as well. Harris is now leading in the crucial state of Wisconsin. She's up 2 points there. Trump led by 4 just last month. Harris has also taken the lead in Georgia, where she's now up 2 percentage points. These are the polls. Like them, don't like them. These are where voters are. Trump has led by as much as 6 when Biden was still in the race in Georgia. Kamala Harris turned the entire race around in 15 days by letting Donald Trump be Donald Trump. Speaking of Georgia, well, here we go. Donald Trump's making himself look weak, backing out of the ABC News debate. Unforced error. He's doubling down on questioning Kamala Harris's racial identity. Again, why? And the most confounding thing of all, he's attacked the popular Republican governor of Georgia. Not only is he attacking Brian Kemp, he is attacking Brian Kemp's wife.
And Brian Kemp, your governor, who I got elected, by the way. If it wasn't for me, he would not be your governor. I think everybody knows that. He's a very disloyal person, isn't he? Very disloyal. But think of the wife. We can never repay you for what you've done, sir. We could have never won. And now she said 2 weeks ago that I will not endorse him because he hasn't earned my endorsement. I haven't earned her endorsement. I have nothing to do with her.
Brian Kemp is the popular Republican governor of Georgia. Trump needs Kemp voters and his political operation. Trump lost Georgia in 2020. Kemp won in 2022. And as you just heard, Trump, for seemingly no reason other than following his worst instincts, attacked Kemp's wife. To be fair, it's day 15 since Biden stepped aside, and Harris has not had a single meaningful interaction with the press. Here she was at Joyce Base Andrews on Thursday, her first unscripted comments to the press, and it was word salad. It's why they keep her effectively in a 2020 version of running from the basement, same as Joe Biden. She's running for president and staying behind closed doors all weekend. Democrats are betting this election on Trump playing to his worst instincts. And history tells us it's a pretty safe bet. Begin tonight with Bill O'Reilly, host of the No Spin News, author of the coming book, Confronting the President's No Spin Assessments from Biden to Washington. Also wrote his column of the week, which I read over the weekend. Mr. O'Reilly, good to see you. Welcome back to the program. You are going to, I know, talk about how the media is giving Kamala Harris a pass. She's not coming out, on and on and on. If we turn this around, at some point, don't Republicans, conservatives, whatever you want to call them, acknowledge how fundamentally flawed as a candidate Donald Trump is?
Why would they do that? They think that Kamala Harris is much worse than Trump, no matter what Trump does. So why would they acknowledge anything like that? That doesn't make sense.
I'm not saying that they would acknowledge it publicly. I'm saying that the punditry must acknowledge and take a little bit of responsibility that Donald Trump, for all the reasons I listed, should be up high single, low double digits, and yet by his own unforced errors, he's giving this to Kamala Harris?
Well, he's making a lot of errors, no doubt about that. The Georgia thing, you shrug your shoulders. But pundits on either side are never going to admit they make a mistake. They make a lot of money supporting or attacking various candidates. That's what they do. Honesty is not really an equation anymore on television news. And we all know that. It's been documented, and we don't have to go through it again. I think at this point in history, Donald Trump, I agree with you, should be up in the polls. The reason he's not is that after he was shot, people had an expectation that he would modify a little bit, and he has not. He picks fights, and the fights don't help him. They don't help the American people. State of Georgia, he should be winning by 7 or 8 points just because of Laken Riley, the University of Georgia student who was murdered brutally by an undocumented migrant. And you have to acknowledge that when you allow millions of people into this country unvetted, that's going to happen. And that's what Biden and Harris have done. So that should have been the focus of his remarks over the weekend, not Brian Kemp and the 2020 election beef. But I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I'm in business to tell the truth about both candidates. Kamala Harris is a far greater danger to the country than Donald Trump. Look at the stock market today. The reason that happened is that we are a consumer spending economy, okay? And the consumer, the American consumer, is out of money. He's out of money because of the high prices of everything, and wages have not kept up. Real wages are down under Biden-Harris. That's the big story. And what does Kamala Harris want to do about it? Raise taxes on corporations, which, of course, would pass that along to the consumer who doesn't have any money. So you can see that we're heading for economic Armageddon if the vice president wins the election in November. Trump is a capitalist. He won't mess around with that. He'll cut taxes. He'll get as much money in circulation by the marketplace, not the federal government, as Biden did, as he can. Okay? So that's how I make my determination. What's better for the folks? Donald Trump is unpredictable. He won't let go of grudges. He's hurting himself. There's no doubt about what I just said. But in the larger picture, your family, your welfare, you're going to vote for Kamala Harris, you're going to feel pain like you've never felt before. And that's my opinion.
Okay. Well, look, Jim Cramer said the same thing today, right? I mean, people have all talked about this as it relates to taxes and the economy. And the polling shows that Donald Trump does better on the issues. He just does not do better overall. Tell you what, we'll do this. We'll roll some of the greatest hits from Atlanta, all the things he did talk about rather than the economy and the border and foreign policy.
I'd like to congratulate Vladimir Putin for having made yet another great deal. They hate when I use Dr. Hannibal Lecter as the late, great Hannibal Lecter. Bruce Springsteen. I'm not I'm not a huge fan. And she happens to be really a low IQ individual. She really does. She has a very low IQ. We're going to defeat crazy Kamala. You know, there's about 19 different ways of saying it. She only likes 3. The 2 words are Merry Christmas. She doesn't want anybody saying Merry Christmas. And I'm for electric cars. I have to be, because Elon endorsed me very strongly, Elon. So I have no choice.
Okay. Look, you say he's better for the country. Okay. You say he's better for the country.
Right.
Okay.
All that stuff doesn't bother me. I guess I'm an outlier. It just doesn't bother me. He wants to be on The Apprentice again. He's putting on a show. He thinks that Putin got the better of the United States in the hostage swap. That's why he's saying Putin made another better deal.
Right.
I don't know Bruce Springsteen, why he's bringing him up. I don't know, Anthony Hopkins in the cage is like, I don't know. I don't care. I see the danger of the progressive left. I know what Joe Biden did to this country. I know what he did. So Trump saying this kind of stuff, it doesn't bother me. I mean, it's
don't expect it to
frustrating
bother you. Yeah, I don't expect it to bother you because I think you very rightly make the point of which America do people feel like they're better off, right? And a vast majority of Americans say they felt better off under Donald Trump, but they're not voting for him as a majority. Let me make this as clear as I can. Let me make it as clear as I can make it to the NewsNation audience. You've had presidents like Andrew Jackson who were partially crazy, okay? When you read Confronting the Presidents, which you have, Jackson would put a bullet between your eyes if he didn't like you, all right? It's not about skin color with Jackson. He'd kill you. And he was a fairly effective, popular president for 2 terms. Now, whether he was good or bad, you can read the book, you can decide it. But there is an overarch to this. Donald Trump hurts himself. Is that self-destructive? I don't know. But he was in office for 4 years, and he did not hurt the country, in my opinion. He didn't. All right? Real wages were up. No foreign wars. You just ran down the litany. Stock market meltdown. Maybe a war in the Middle East. It's chaos. And you're going to turn that chaos over to Kamala Harris, who has 0 accomplishments at the federal level? Nothing? Who was voted the most liberal senator of all of them in 2000? No, I'm just saying you in a generic. Who was voted the most liberal senator of all of them in 2019, causing Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren to break down into tears? You should have picked me. You're going to give it to this woman to get us out of all of this stuff? To me, it's inconceivable, all right? Trump says stuff all day long. The media, that's all they report about him. That's it, okay? I get it. But I'm looking out for the folks, Leland. You know me a long time. That's why I'm successful. I bring my message. What's better for the people? And sometimes the people don't understand what's better for them. But I will tell you this, if that economy slides into a recession, which it may, okay, and you elect Kamala Harris, you vote for her, you're hurting yourself, okay, big time. Yeah. I understand the economic arguments. I understand the arguments. It is just puzzling to me, and it has been. I don't know Donald Trump that well. I've covered him for a long time, but I don't know him that well. You know him far better, and I thought your
I know him really well.
Yeah. And so explain to the people. I know him really well,
and I can't explain. I can't.
Okay.
I can't explain it. When he talks to me, he's lucid, and he doesn't say this stuff. I went on a tour with the man, 4 gigantic shows, and I said, we're not talking about the election. And we didn't. It was just history. With me, he's fine. Then he goes to Georgia, and I can't explain it. No one can explain it. I don't believe Melania could explain it, okay? It's just him, but those are our choices. Get real about it. It's Kamala or him.
No, well, that it is. All right, Bill, we will look forward to the Kamala column. I know it's coming out next week, and yes, I have read Confronting the President. I got a few questions for you, all right, this week. I'll see you on Friday in New York for that, all right?
Yeah, Leland's going to grill me about the book, so that'll be fun, Confronting the Presidents. And people who want to read a column, it's entitled The Truth About Candidate Trump. It's on BillO'Reilly.com, free for everybody. And next Sunday will be The Truth About Kamala Harris. And if anybody has a beef on a column, Bill at BillO'Reilly.com. Because I'm just giving you the facts. Boom, boom, boom. You dispute them, I want to hear about it. Thanks for having me on, Leland.
See you, buddy. Donald Trump has a new plan to win black voters. I guess this is part of it, is tripling down on Kamala Harris's race, a net positive. And the bizarre story of RFK Jr. and the dead bear. He asks how the magazine that uncovered the story will spin it. Do you even have to spin a dead bear?
I realized I couldn't go home. I had to go to the airport. And the bear was in my car, and I didn't want to leave the bear in the car. This was the little bit of the redneck in me. There'd been a series of bicycle accidents.
When you talk about me, because I'm coming for way many men. Many men. Wish that from me.
Little dystopian moment there. Donald Trump walking out for a podcast interview today in Florida. He traded the lyrics of God Bless the USA for the rapper 50 Cent. Among the lyrics that we can share with you, since my mother is watching, many men, many men wish death upon me. Lord, I don't cry no more. Don't look to the sky no more. Have mercy on me. Okay, it's all right. Not my thing, but family friendly. Trump is hemorrhaging the black vote right now. In mid-July, we saw a historic amount of black voters turn away from the Democratic Party. 58% said they would cast a ballot for Democrats. Now Kamala Harris, the presumptive nominee, that number is up to 74% and growing. Sage Steele, host of the Sage Steele Show on Bill Maher's podcast network, Club Random Studios. It is good to see you. Barack Obama got north of 95% of the African-American vote. Does Kamala Harris by default inherit that?
I would venture to say no. And here's the thing. I never know what poll to trust. It seems to depend and vary greatly based on which poll. So I don't know. But just watching closely online and on social media, this is very different. Barack Obama, listen, he didn't have that much of a track record coming into office either, right? Certainly compared to Kamala Harris, it's actually almost comparable. He had a little bit more. But otherwise, it was a very different time. 2008 was a completely different time, a different world. Now, I do believe that all voters, not just black Americans, obviously, have paid close attention to the last 3.5 years and are putting race aside. They should. That's what all Americans should be doing, including Donald Trump, and focusing on the policies. So after the debate, you looked at some of those polls, and quite a lot of black voters were like, okay, we're going with Trump here. I still think he'll get a lot more of the black vote than he did the last 2 times. But obviously the last few weeks since Biden stepped down and she steps in, she has certainly taken a chunk out of that high group of people, of black voters, who said that they were going to go for him. I still think it's early, though. Get her on that debate stage, and I think she'll be exposed. And from there, again, I hope we can put this race card aside, focus on policies. It's so frustrating as a voter to watch so much being made out of this by the Republican Party.
All good points. A few things there. Number one, I think we can all agree that the black men, black women divide is going to be really interesting to watch, because where Donald Trump was really gaining was with black men. But you said put race aside, and the issue of Kamala Harris's race, whether she is African-American, African-Indian American, Indian American, and she's been identified as all those things through the years, keeps coming up. Here's George Stephanopoulos and Byron Donalds.
If it doesn't matter, why do you all keep questioning her identity? She's always identified as a black woman. She is biracial. She has a Jamaican father and an Indian mother. She's always identified as both. Why are you questioning that?
Well, George, first of all, this is something that's actually a conversation throughout social media right now. There are a lot of people who are trying to figure this out. But again, that's a side issue, not the main issue. The main issue...
Sir, 1 second. You just did it. You just did it again.
...of the United States.
The indignity of George Stephanopoulos put aside here. We all know Donald Trump says things that are outrageous, oftentimes because somebody said it to him before and then he goes out and repeats it. It's how we know that COVID came from a lab in China. What is it about this issue of Kamala Harris's race that he is hearing or people are telling him is something to pull on as a thread?
First of all, I do think that there is some confusion, and it's warranted, because she has indeed identified as Indian American, as black, African American, as biracial, all of the things. Listen, coming from a very proud biracial woman who refuses to choose a side despite what the left has told me for many, many years, basically my whole life, I understand the sensitivity to it. It's just I have never said I'm black, I'm white, because I happen to be all of it. The Associated Press is the one that put out there, and other media, media platforms, journalists, several different publications put out there Indian American, and then black, African American, biracial. So it's not like it's just the conservatives, the Republican Party that put this out there. She has done it herself. That said, I don't care where she's from, which God she worships. If she's green, blue, I don't care. I care strictly about policies. To me, her policies are terrible. So let's focus on that. Unfortunately, George Stephanopoulos doesn't want to, and I think it's actually smart move by him and many others in the mainstream media to deflect away from her policies because they're so bad, proven bad. So let's focus on the apparent Republican obsession with this race thing. But it is taking away, because at the end of the day, most Americans don't care. It is about your policies. And I just wish that we could get away from that, and that Donald Trump would get away from that as well. Or better than that, you can win based on crushing her for what she has and has not done. I wish people would just let go of it.
Well, the person who would have to let go with it in the beginning, right, is Donald Trump, because that's where it's coming from in his campaign. What is the divide now? Or I shouldn't say the divide. What is the issue that we're seeing where Donald Trump was doing so well with African American men, and he was doing especially well when he was running against Joe Biden on, ding, 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 the issues? Black women have always been much more skeptical, and now there seems to be a movement to try and use black women almost to then twist the arm, shall we say, of the men in their lives back to Kamala Harris's camp.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I want to be careful of is when we say the black vote. Granted, for Barack Obama, 97% of blacks voted for him, and those are facts and those are numbers. But I do want to caution, because, and it's happened every single election, what's the black vote? We're not monolithic. Like, just because of the color of our skin doesn't mean that we think the same, vote the same, marry the same, act the same, believe the same. And I get frustrated with that. And trust me, it's everybody. It's everybody. So sometimes I hesitate to speak for the black community, because it's not that easy. That said, the poll numbers, the exit polls, et cetera, do speak, and you have to pay attention to it a little bit. I don't know that, black women are saying to their men, you can't do that. Maybe they are. At the end of the day, I think it actually comes down to never Trumpers, and they can be black, white, Asian, Indian, you name it. And people were leaning towards Trump because you saw Biden and you were scared, because it is obvious he cannot lead this country. He is unable to physically and mentally, and that actually, from a human level, to me, is heartbreaking to watch a human being go through that. Again, shame on his wife and all of his people who have allowed it, but that's a story for another day. That's when we need to have wine. That said, to me, this is just, oh my gosh, we don't have to vote for Donald Trump because there's Kamala now. What blows me away, whether, again, we're talking about blacks, whites voting, is the fact that, wait, look at the policies. And this is a couple of months ago. She was in the basement. They completely buried her until they realized, whoa, debate, June 27th. We have a problem with Joe Biden. Everybody somehow just forgets that her policies are the same as Joe Biden's, if not more radical. So I just need people to slow down, take a deep breath, get that glass of wine, whatever it takes. Let's use our brains. Let's use our words and not vote with emotion. Facts over feelings. Why is this so difficult regardless of our race?
Fair enough. I think some very good points. We could all benefit, perhaps, in America from a glass of wine. Look, Donald Trump for 4 weeks, when he was winning and ahead in the polls, he was actually pretty disciplined, and then everything happened. All right, the glass of wine is going to happen when I come on your podcast. I'll bring the bottle. All right.
Bring a couple, because I'm just getting going. Oh my gosh.
All right, I love it. We'll see you soon. Thank you. All right. Donald Trump says he is the candidate who can prevent World War III. Which might be helpful right now, considering that we are awaiting a possible attack by Iran on Israel. The Middle East is poised to explode. Why nobody cares. Live pictures of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where Kamala Harris will unveil her new vice presidential pick. By every conceivable measure, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro should be the pick. He's wildly popular in his home state. He's young, a great speaker, but he's Jewish. And that is a big, big problem for the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. The Congresswoman Cori Bush, for example, of St. Louis, refused to label Hamas a terrorist organization when asked by the New York Times. She related Hamas to the BLM protests because she was an organizer of that. Would they qualify to me as a terrorist organization? Yes. But do I know that? Absolutely not. I have no communication with them. All I know is that we were, meaning BLM protesters, considered terrorists. We were considered black identity extremists, and all we were doing was trying to get peace. I'm not trying to compare us, but that taught me to be careful about labeling if I don't know. Having interviewed Cori Bush, that kind of jives with her knowledge of important issues of the day. Joining us now, reporter for Notice, Catherine Schwartz, and senior editor for Reason, co-host of Rising on the Hill, Rabeh Suave. Catherine, start with you. How cognizant of the Jewish issue is Kamala Harris's team?
Well, when you look at the issue of Israel-Palestine right now, the conflict, obviously it is at the top of mind for VP Harris. I mean, in fact, she's been in meetings all day with President Biden on that issue. Looking as well at Doug Emhoff, her husband, as well being Jewish, you know, him and Governor Josh Shapiro, who you were just mentioning there, they were together at the Tree of Life Synagogue about a month before Harris entered the race. They're talking about this issue. This is an active issue. It's certainly one that's on the top of mind for voters as well.
Robbie, it's hard to imagine how Kamala Harris wins the presidency without Pennsylvania. It's hard to imagine that Josh Shapiro does not help her in Pennsylvania. If he is not picked tomorrow, is it fair to say that the progressive, far-left, pro-Hamas adjacent wing of the Democratic Party won?
100%, because the argument, as you just laid out, for picking Josh Shapiro is so ironclad. If they were in exactly the opposite position, if Josh Shapiro was governor of Minnesota and you had Tim Walz, governor of Pennsylvania, then it would make sense to pick Tim Walz. The fact is she has to win Pennsylvania, and if this is a potential to win hundreds or thousands of votes in that state to move them from moderate, independent Republicans, you know, Trump skeptical, moderate people into the Kamala category, it's obvious that's what they should do. That would be worth it. So the only reason is if the far left gets listened to this, and they're being vocal. They're saying very specifically, you know what, we'll take anyone except Josh Shapiro, and that's the reason.
You are nodding along.
Well, just to push back a little bit on it when it comes to the VP pick, there are certainly a lot of factors separate from the electability. So looking at the data...
Okay, respectfully, okay, there's electability. 5 pounds of dirt, and then what?
But you've got to go back to the data here, which shows there's not a huge connection between where a vice president is from and winning that state. So, yes, I completely agree that when it comes to Governor Shapiro, he is a known factor in the state. And I talked to a lot of voters in Pennsylvania on the ground reporting there who are not aware of Harris's record. They're still waiting to hear from her, waiting to see what she is doing on the campaign trail. They know Shapiro. However, if you're looking back at the data, there's not a huge background to show that he is the deciding factor. I think on Vice President Harris' mind, and this is what I talk to strategists about all the time, is who is she going to be able to govern with? Who does she want to lead with? Who is bringing in the experience? And I'm hearing, and strategists are talking a lot about Governor Walz in that factor.
Yeah, no, and look, there's now reporting that there's a large contingent of blacked out suburbans outside his house in Minnesota. Take from that what you will. Here's Donald Trump about Harris's VP pick. Take a listen.
I don't care. Let them do whatever. They still want to have open borders. If she picks Shapiro, she's going to lose the Palestinian vote, and that's fine. Everybody has their liabilities. I think if she picks Shapiro, who happens to be Jewish, she loses her little Palestinian base because they like me because they think I'm going to bring peace to the Middle East, even though I'm very strong for Israel.
Doesn't seem like there's going to be a huge Arab vote in Michigan for Donald Trump, but I'm just going out there on a limb. There is a big Jewish vote that is now rising for Donald Trump. Rabeh, to this point, the almost unending and unyielding hammering by the Biden administration and by Kamala Harris that a ceasefire in Gaza is the panacea to all. Do they have a plan if there is not?
No, they don't, because they are, reliant on voters, Arab American voters in Michigan, who are not happy. Now, I don't agree with them, but they're not happy at all with what the Biden administration has done. There's kind of this vibe right now that the left or progressives are going to end up being happier with Kamala Harris than they've been with Joe Biden on this issue. I'm not sure what that's based on or why they think that. I think they're going to be in for disappointment. The Democrats need this issue to go away real fast to keep their progressive base in line as they pursue the moderate voters.
Do they need it to go away?
I wouldn't say that they need it to go away, because one of the strengths with VP Harris that I talk to strategists, particularly in Pennsylvania, in the blue wall about, is that she is bringing in base voters in a way that President Biden did not, among young people, minorities. So there's a lot of confidence in her right now and her ability to win over those voters on all sorts of issues, on her age alone, her energy that she's bringing to the ticket, separate from that one issue of Israel.
I don't know. There's a lot more black women in Michigan and Pennsylvania than there are Arab Americans in Michigan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just the numbers. All right. Good to see both of you.
Good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
My friend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Live look at Haifa, northern Israel. This is where the attack from Iran would come. So far, 5 U.S. service personnel hurt by Iran. What Israel's watching for, can President Biden stop it? What if he doesn't when we come back? In a retaliatory attack on Israel, the Israelis killed key leaders of Hezbollah and Hamas. All right, 2 rockets were already launched at Al-Assad Air Base in Iraq, injuring at least 5 American service members. So far, no strikes by the United States in retaliation. And adding to it all, Israel just hit another Hezbollah commander in northern southern Lebanon, off the northern Israeli border. The U.S. Embassy is encouraging Americans to leave Lebanon. The U.S. relocated assets across the Middle East in preparation for an attack by Iran and its proxies. The Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group is in the Gulf of Oman, along with the U.S. Fifth Fleet. Israel's also taking serious steps to prepare for a true all-out war. 80,000 people have been evacuated out of Israel's north. And for the first time in this conflict, Israel prepared an underground bunker for Prime Minister Netanyahu, and they're considering a preemptive strike on Iran. So far, the message from the United States, the Ayatollah, is largely in line with what Biden has said all along. Met in the Situation Room today, for example. Don't.
We have sending consistent messages through our diplomatic engagements, encouraging people to communicate to the government of Iran that escalation is not in their interest, and that we will defend Israel from attacks, and that escalation does not serve Iran's interests, just as it doesn't serve the interests of anyone in the region.
All right. Michael Hanlon is the Director of Research and Foreign Policy at the Brookings Institute and joins us now. How many times can Iran ignore the United States, hurt American troops, attack our allies before there has to be a meaningful response, not from the Israelis, but from the United States?
Well, it's an excellent question. I think Iran has figured out that the kind of back and forth it tends to engage in, it can control. And as you imply with your question, the United States will do something specific by way of retaliation, but nothing that hurts Iran too much, partly because we don't want to go to the next level ourselves. The question is, does the pride of the various parties involved here now require them to do something that, in a sense, their realpolitik calculus tells them they should not do? So if Hezbollah, and Iran via Hezbollah hits 20 Israeli targets and, heaven forbid, kills 3 people, that's sort of a way for Iran to do something but show some degree of restraint. But if Iran does what they did in April and some of those 300-plus weapons get through, then Iran is requiring Israel and maybe even the United States to take another step forward and escalate ourselves. The United States.
You make a great point, right? Which is there's a calculus on both sides. And when you look at that picture of Kamala Harris and President Biden together in the Situation Room, Iran knows that America does not want, or I should say, the Biden administration does not want any escalation because they know what it means politically. They want a ceasefire in Gaza. That's, they think, their only hope politically moving forward. Given that Iran knows that, Israel knows that, Israel feels that it's isolated and therefore has to be more aggressive. At what point does the United States almost become, I don't want to say irrelevant, but appearing to be leading from behind, impotent? What's the right word?
Well, leading from behind is not a bad phrase. And, in a sense, you could say that's what presidents have been doing in the United States for 30 plus years, because there's really no American who's gone out of his way as president to try to have this fight with Iran. Take, for example, George W. Bush. He had his doctrine of preemption, but at a time the United States essentially controlled Iraq, he prevented Israel from attacking Iranian nuclear facilities. And he said, no, I still think diplomacy is a better option. I don't want an escalating Middle East conflict. So you're right to ask the question, but the interesting thing is that it's actually been American presidents of both parties who for a long time have not seen any particular reason to want to get into this kind of a war. But at some point, you get pushed to the threshold where you can't just do the same thing. And that's what everybody's nervous about. So you're right to raise the question. At some point, it's going to feel like we're not doing enough. And you're right, election year dynamics complicate it and exacerbate it. But all these dynamics would be there anyway, whether it's Biden, Obama, Trump, Bush, or anybody else in the White House so far.
All good points. Michael, thank you very much. Now we wait to see what the Iranian calculus is. It's good to see you. Donald Trump thinks today's stock market crash, and it was a crash, is going to propel him to the White House. Why replacing Bidenomics with Kamala-omics won't sell.
This election, you will quickly have a Kamala economic crash. You're going to have a crash. You could also have a crash like in 1929, more specifically, because that's where we're headed. When we win, you will rapidly see a brand new Trump economic boom. It's going to be booming.
And that was before the bottom fell out of the stock market today. Live pictures of New York City. Stock market has a third day in a row of major declines. Republicans are trying to brand this stock market meltdown as the Kamala crash. I guess try to rebrand Bidenomics with Kamala-omics. With us now, Dan Ricciardo, clinical professor of finance at the University of San Diego. Therefore, the court has admitted you as an expert in these matters. Dan, thank you very much. All right. Is there a connection between politics and what happened over the past few days?
Well, no question. I think what you're seeing, Leland, is, first of all, whoever occupies the White House, whoever is the administration in power, good or bad, they're going to get the credit or blame for what goes on in the economy and the markets. We see that over and over again. And I think to a certain extent, you are seeing some repricing in the markets due to maybe the last week or so where we've seen the election odds change a bit, right? So it's a fast-paced move, no question, as you've been reporting on. But there is an intersection between politics and economics. Today's market crash, if you want to call it that, isn't necessarily because of a poll or something like that. But there is some shifting wind in the market, no question.
Yeah, well, and look, between the debate and the RNC say there was this feeling that Donald Trump was going to win. Donald Trump was being normal. He was being disciplined. Then he started losing in the polls and becomes, more and more attuned with his worst instincts. And then it creates this cycle that we have seen here. We hear so often now, fears of a recession. Yet more than half of Americans feel that we're in a recession. They tell pollsters we're in a recession. I understand the technical definition. We are not. Do the words here even matter when you look at where finance and voting intersect? Do the words matter or do the feelings matter?
It's an excellent point, and it's what I call a kitchen table recession. You're right. Technically, we're probably not in a recession, and we won't know that, by the way, until we look backwards. But I call it a kitchen table recession for a reason, Leland, and that's because many Americans, poll after poll, tell us that, yes, we have a job. Yes, the job market's getting a little bit weaker, but we still think we will have a job. But the fact is, when we sit around our kitchen table to do our budget, to figure out where our money's going, between $10 burritos and $8 mini wheats, we're not making it, right? Our incomes in many ways over the last number of years haven't kept pace with inflation. So technically, the economists, shout out to them. We may not be in a recession, but if you ask your next door neighbor, She's probably going to tell you she is.
Yeah, look, and there's the idea that the rich keep getting richer, which they did under Donald Trump. They have under Joe Biden. The middle class under Donald Trump, the polling tells us, felt a lot better than they did under Joe Biden. Can we backtest this and say it was the Trump policies in the late 20-teens?
Yeah, let's call it a mixed bag on that one. And by the way, the rich have gotten richer throughout history. And this is not a Republican or Democrat issue. They're doing quite fine, by the way. Then, so great, good for them. But the reality is that President Trump had certain policies that were clearly more market friendly. And in fact, one of the ones he's been articulating the last few weeks, as you know, is his whole position on cryptocurrencies. Very market friendly. That's a Donald Trump hallmark. We've seen that in President Trump's history throughout. Whereas on the other side of the ledger, Democrats typically favor a little bit more regulation. They typically favor a little bit more tax, right, than the Republicans would favor. So there's no question there's at least a difference, subtle as it may be, between the economic policies of the former president and this president and potentially future president.
But buckle up, both financially and politically, for the next 90 some odd days. All right, Dan, it's good to see you. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Looking forward towards tomorrow. We have those live pictures of Philadelphia. Two main people to watch: the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. A couple of things here. One, does Kamala Harris want somebody who could overshadow her? Are people going to look and go, wow, I wish he was running for president? Because remember, she didn't have to run for the nomination. That is part of the consideration tonight. Number two, everyone keeps talking about how it would upset the pro-Hamas wing if they pick Josh Shapiro. Here's something you don't hear about a lot that we will be covering tomorrow. If she doesn't pick Josh Shapiro, what does that do to the Jewish vote in America? Kamala Harris has a choice. Will she make the same mistake Donald Trump did? That's tomorrow. Here's Chris.